1 billion people survive on $1 a day, while 80% of the world's population exists on less than $10. According to UNICEF, nearly 30,000 children die daily due to poverty. The UN aimed to eradicate extreme poverty by 2015, but they will fail. Their expert advisors say there is no easy remedy. They claim there is no silver bullet.
Poverty is not natural, it's the result of a rigged global economy. As rich nations grow richer, more people become poorer. Under the present economic rules of the game, it's impossible to make poverty history. That's because governments refuse to adopt the policies that would enable people to earn a decent living.
For the origins of today's global crisis, we have to look to Europe. Mass poverty was inevitable when people were dispossessed of their land. In England in the 17th century, the aristocracy grabbed the land of the village commons. In Scotland, the highlands were cleared in the 18th century. Many took refuge on the continents of America, Australia and Africa. But land grabbing was not confined to the United Kingdom.
The same thing happened here in Mozambique when the settlers arrived from Portugal. The land was grabbed and people were driven from the countryside into the shanty towns. Wages were driven down and people were no longer masters of their destiny.
After Mozambique's civil war, in which 1 million people died, the land was nationalised. It is now distributed to people by government. But in a market economy, trouble starts when governments think that it's enough just to reunite people with land. The socially privileged elite know that what counts is the amount of income that can be extracted from tenants who occupy farmland or urban locations.
After independence, the Portuguese landlords left and the land was nationalised. According to the Constitution, this is what would happen. To create wealth and social well-being, the right to use land belongs to the people of Mozambique. This meant that everyone was supposed to be treated equally. But because the government did not understand how the economy works, the people with the best locations in the towns and the most fertile land were able to pocket that extra revenue, the rent. This was not the equal treatment of all people in Mozambique. As a result, the majority suffered at the hands of the minority.
When these ladies work, they produce more than their wages. They also produce a stream of income which, in the history of civilization, served a unique purpose. This almost invisible revenue stream, the economic cream, funded the arts and sciences which advanced humanity. This additional value arose when people united their creative energies to drive their productivity above subsistence levels. The money collected as ground rents went into the public purse and was used for everybody's benefit. But now, unfair property rights are responsible for skewing the global economy. A select few prosper at the expense of those who create that added income.
Take the case of this village. It doesn't have running water. Women and children walk for hours to bring drinking water back to their homes. It does not cost many dollars to sink a well into the ground so that water is on tap. But big gains from little steps forward are lost when the rents are privatized. Rents that people need to pay for their homes, their farms and workshops because they now have basic amenities.
So what happens now Africa's rents are privatized? They eventually end up in banks in America and Europe. Governments then have no choice but to tax workers' wages and the goods that people consume. This punishes productive activity and drives many out of employment and into the shanty towns. If the economic cream, the rents, continue to go into a private purse, poverty will never be made history. In a country like Mozambique, that money is needed to fund social and economic development.
People are willing to pay rent based on the fertility of the soil, the availability of public services and natural resources such as water. But who receives that rent determines the fate of these children. Africa needs that revenue stream to fund public services like this school. Mothers need clinics. Healthy and educated children means higher wages and more revenue for the community, but not if that revenue ends up in Western bank accounts.
When rents are privatised, every community is impoverished. The only formula for abolishing poverty is from the bottom up. This happens when we combine the security of private property rights with a government willing to raise its revenue from land. Everyone is empowered. People are free to create their own economic opportunities. They are released from dependency on the state. And most importantly, their country is unshackled from the debt strings that are attached to foreign aid. This is the lesson from the World Bank-backed Commission on Growth and Development. Its investigation into how countries have grown since the Second World War identifies the 7 fastest growing countries. The one thing they had in common? Land reform. The land reform encouraged private enterprise and fostered greater equality in the distribution of income. But this recipe for prosperity is treated as a state secret by Western economists. Why? Because the rigged global economy treats Africa like a sitting tenant that is stripped of its annual rents by its landlords. To take control of its own agenda for growth, Africa must understand the economics that traps the continent in poverty. It is rich enough to be a dynamic global player if it stops playing the game that was rigged by the West.
South Africa has the moral authority to offer leadership to the whole of Africa, but she also has the wealth. I'm not referring just to the gold and the diamonds that were dug out of this hole, which now adorn the British Crown jewels. I'm referring to the gold that paves the streets of cities like Johannesburg.
It is not just the precious metal under the ground that built Johannesburg. These walkways are paved with gold. Gold in the form of rents produced by the millions of people who come to work every day. So why is the land that Mandela dreamed about in his prison cell now using taxes that guarantee poverty for the next 4 generations? When South Africa forced apartheid into history, the ANC government could have stopped penalising productive people.
But instead, in 2004, the government scrapped the land-based property tax. In doing so, it abandoned the most effective tool for rebalancing society.
The economics of poverty are brutally simple. When the rents of nature's resources are privatised, 2 things become inevitable. First, the public sector is starved of funds. Second, governments have to tax the wages of working people. This locks poverty into the fabric of our communities. Economists retreat from this reality. That's why they claim there is no silver bullet, what they call a quick fix solution. That's a cop-out. We can make poverty history, and South Africa could lead the way.
Wabuyama dingin toro kokwa tingano tingala tingan tingano kokwane ho tingano